My name is Paul Charlevoix, and I lead the Industrial Design and Human Factors team at StarFish Medical. My team specializes in many different facets. One of the key things that we do is usability engineering. And so that means that everything from upfront, where we would do key opinion leader or KOL user interviews, doing procedural observations, as well as doing things such as formative testing, summative testing, any kind of usability development that would be required, both from a user experience perspective, as well as the more regulatory and formal requirements that would be needed for overseeing body clearance.
Hi, I'm Mike Lovelace. I'm an industrial designer with StarFish, and I have over 15 years experience in consumer product design, focusing a lot on user-centric design. A very specific example, working on an activity stand that was in a medical facility with the intent of making it now applicable to a residential setting. As designers, we sort of approach that from the perspective of trying to have that match the residential environment itself. Maybe it was relatively light, airy, less intrusive in the room. We thought that would be a very good direction. Having presented that to KOLs though, to end users, and in this field, the typical end user is someone with osteoporosis. In presenting those sort of light, contemporary concepts to them, they did not resonate at all. And the reason being that they required safety, they required stability and sturdiness, and that's what's important to them. Through speaking to the KOLs, we can learn those motivations and we can learn those sort of underlying behaviors that allow us to create truly impactful designs that meet the needs and meet the design challenges that we face.
We are working on a ventilator program for the Canadian government. And so, of course, with that program came many different challenges, not the least of which was the extremely short timeline created by the pandemic, as well as other things such as limited availability of components and limited availability to do usability testing because we were truncating a multi-year design and development cycle into a few months. So one of the biggest challenges that my team was tasked with was getting user feedback in terms of both the design and development as well as the validation on the backside of the design effort.
I'm Hannah Rusak-Guillory. I'm a human factors engineer at StarFish Medical. I have a background in biomedical engineering and experience with both designing and testing the user interfaces of medical devices. So when we do usability testing at StarFish, we recruit participants externally. These are people who are either what we call lay users, so individuals without clinical experience, or individuals with clinical experience, so physicians, nurses, individuals of that sort. We've learned that the new COVID-19 guidelines are not a barrier for usability testing. We've found that with a bit more planning and a slightly adjusted process, we've been able to get great results, if not better, because we're planning more. In general, the addition of the new COVID guidelines haven't necessarily impacted the way we do things here at StarFish. If anything, it's really just amplified our need to organize ourselves beforehand. So making sure we have the proper participants that have gone through the appropriate survey to make sure that they are safe and healthy, so we don't jeopardize anyone's safety here at the facility, as well as making sure that we have the proper location. So we have predetermined PPE in place, and we have a set spot where we are conducting our testing.
My name is Niall Redmond. I'm Senior Human Factors Design Engineer at StarFish Medical. My background is in consumer goods and industrial design. And I've got 15 years product development experience. The way we used remote testing in a modular format was that we would send graphical user interfaces to participants as well as user documentation such as instructions for use and quick reference guides. We would then create scenarios and plan them ahead of time, and then when we meet with them online, we would present them with the scenarios with the graphical user interfaces and instructions for uses on the screens beside them. This way they could interact with the graphical user interfaces in an online environment, but using the scenarios, get into the mindset of the use scenario and use environment that's required. This way you can create and gather very quick and tangible data that is really useful for iterative design process. It allows you to quickly iterate between designs rather than having to set up use environments that the participant can come into. One great finding from all of this was that remote testing in a modular format is in fact as good, if not better, for graphical user interface testing. The reason for this is you don't have the testing staff in the room. So the testing staff cause a certain lower amount of fidelity and make the participants often a little bit uncomfortable. So it increases the accuracy of the use environment and it gives better overall more tangible results. User documentation, on the other hand, and 3D printed parts, we'll probably just go back to the original way.
Because we had certain constraints such as availability of parts, which is not a usual constraint for us, we decided to take a different approach to the interface itself. Most modern vents use graphical user interfaces with touchscreens and things of the sort, which we just could not do. And so because we were going to a more classical hardware interface, that meant that we had to really get the design right as much as possible the first time, which of course didn't give us a lot of time to iterate because of course making changes to a hardware versus a software interface is much more difficult. So our KOLs on this project donated their time and expertise on a volunteer basis, and this was immensely useful to us because we were able to get a lot of information very quickly. On a normal project, this would be a very expensive endeavor, of course, because it would require substantial access and a lot of hours from a lot of people to be involved in the project early on instead of spread over the course of the life of the project. So the user interface that we ended up with was very well received by clinicians in the field, and this was largely thanks to all of the initial hard work and interviews that we had with our key opinion leaders, as well as all of the sort of rolling feedback that they gave us over the course of the first couple months of the development process.
If you'd like to know more about StarFish, we've been doing this for 20 years. We've developed hundreds of devices for companies all over the industry, and we've helped many founders become very successful and have big clinical impacts. That's what we really love for. So enjoy the content. If you'd like to talk to us about your project, we'd be happy to talk. Thank you.